All right. Never give up. Strength comes through struggle. Those are the phrases our guest on today's Aim Higher used in the inscription he wrote in the copies of his 2 books he was gracious enough to send me. So who is this entrepreneur of entrepreneurs, Jay Myers, who runs the highly successful Interactive Solutions, Inc., commonly called ISI? Welcome, Jay.
Appreciate it, Ken. Thanks for having me on the show.
Yeah, I appreciate you being here. Hey, give us a 30-second scoop on ISI. Who are you guys?
Yeah, well, so ISI, or Interactive Solutions, is a technology company headquartered in Memphis with offices in Little Rock and Nashville and those kind of places. We specialize in video conferencing and audiovisual systems, sales, and support. And some of the areas of interest that we focus on are distance learning, telemedicine, video walls, anything complex in the AV world. We're very good at that.
Oh, good. All right. So thanks for doing that, opening us up. But I got to tell you, I love your books. And so I'm going to show them to everybody. Yeah, there's the first one that Jay wrote, Keep Swinging. Very good one. And this is the one that I just actually finished recently, Hitting the Curveballs. You might pick up that he's got a bent towards baseball, and that's okay. That's a good thing for both of us. We both are. But, you know, Jay, by the time we're done, my guess is there's going to be some folks that are listening to this, watching this, they're going to say, hey, where can I get those? Where can they get them?
Well, you can go on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, a lot of those kind of websites to get them. You know, they're also, by the way, Ken, just an FYI, but it's Hitting the Curveballs is also available on Audible.
Hey, and very good. Good.
And which is fun. And I must say that on your show here that I'm very proud of the narrator of the book. I could have had a studio person, but I chose my son to do the narration. And I think he did a nice job. So
that's a good thing. All right. So these 2 things, books bring up an idea that you've been through some trials and tribulations. I'm assuming they've allowed you to do some things only others dream of. Let's talk about what those trials and tribulations you went through allowed you to do with our favorite team.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So trials and tribulations, I guess it started way back when, Ken, when and Keep Swinging, I had a lot of detail about it and drama and all that kind of stuff, where I had an embezzlement crisis.
Right.
And my accounting manager stole over $250,000 from me within days after my brother dropped dead. And it was the worst of times. It was gut-wrenching. It's still hard to talk about, but I think that it strengthened the resolve that I had with the business to try to move it forward. And for your listeners out there, I think that the positive part of the story was we learned how to run our business maybe more efficiently and tighten some things up. But from a justice prevails standpoint, we did put the accounting manager in federal prison thanks to the Secret Service for over 100 months or almost 9 years.
Yeah. You know, and that's, I don't know if you've read Dave Ramsey's book, EntreLeadership, and it might be reversed on the screen. Sometimes that happens. But if you pick up Dave Ramsey's EntreLeadership book, Dave describes his definition of employees in there as come late, leave early, and steal. And I think you learned that with when they are just employees, they don't have skin in the game of the company directly enough that they can do some of those kind of things, which requires you to develop team members, or what I would argue should be called crew members, right?
Ken, it's interesting. Dave Ramsey's office was within about a mile from my office in Nashville. I did read EntreLeadership, and I thought it was great. He's a talented guy. I'd listened to his radio show. The other thing so to kind of get the other major crisis, I guess it was probably, I don't know, 6 months or so after I had participated in my first New York Yankee fantasy camp in Tampa and played baseball, living the dream and the whole thing with the retired Yankees, the pros and everything, and included people like Darryl Strawberry and, you know, Mickey Rivers and all these guys from the past. And it was just a big time. Then that summer, so it was in January that I had the camp. That summer, Ken, I don't know how to describe it, you know, but I tried to in the book. It was just the craziest thing. You could almost feel the earth moving, just something in the air. And restlessness with my employees, particularly my sales team, and many of them pretty tenured. So picture this: in 30 days, a little over that, but right at or close to 30 days, I had 4 members from my sales and support team leave the company 1 week, 1 week, 1 week, 1 week. During that same period of time, I had one of my top install technicians go in the hospital for liver transplant, never came out. I had a friend go on vacation to Gulf Shores, Alabama, never came back. Saturday, I attend funerals. You haven't lived until you're trying to console your employees.
Yeah.
When your own heart is breaking. And then on top of that, Ken, you may remember the book, my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer.
Right.
I thought the world was coming to an end. I got to tell you. And it was so traumatic that I was afraid to turn the lights off my bedroom. And people are going like, what's that all about? And I was afraid of what the next day was going to look like.
What's next? Yeah.
What's next, everything. But, the point, though, I think is kind of interesting about this, whether it be the embezzlement or this crazy turnover, a lot of times you can have problems undo your business and you go south and it can be terrible. Or many times, at least in our case, I think God smiled on us in these cases to put these challenges in front of us to strengthen the resolve to push forward and to make an impact. And so after that horrible summer of 2007, we decided to rebuild the business, and I'm very proud of these guys and everything. We rebuilt the sales team, not with a bunch of experienced guys, but with millennials who we could train. And you can remember the part I said about the farm system in the book and everything. Develop your young talent so you keep your business around for 5, 10, 15 years. And so those guys, I think it's still one of the more fun stories. In the summer of 2007, they're trained. It's very complex technology. No experience. We did about $11 million in 2007. 4 years later, we more than doubled business to $25 million in sales amidst the worst economy in 80 years. I thought that was worth writing about.
I think that's pretty impressive, and I think that's absolutely correct as we work through some of these things. It's amazing what happens. I don't know if another favorite author that we were just talking about, Pat Lencioni. I talk to his Table Group folks quite often, but his Silos, Politics, and Turf Wars books, he talks in there about the value of crises and whether or not there is an actual crisis or not, how much it can bring people together. So as you go through these things, my guess is you had a much stronger team at the end because you went through and the way that you led the group through. You're probably better off than you were. Would you guess that that's true or not? I'm throwing that in there as though I know what's going on, but
I don't think there's any question of it, Ken. I think that with all the crisis, when I was recruiting the millennials, it was kind of interesting. Rather than going out and having somebody, hey, grab a job with this technology company and another entry on your resume sort of thing.
Right.
I wasn't looking for those kind of people. I literally kind of position it like, this is a company in crisis. We're transparent, man. We're having a lot of trouble here, and we need help. But I don't want you coming over here for another job. I want you to join a cause. I want you to have an impact on this business to the degree that, the story of 2007 to 2011, you helped double business for this technology company. It was on its back in the worst economy in 80 years. I said, these are the kind of stories you can tell your grandchildren. And so it was much deeper than just, having a new group of people coming on board. It was an emotional alliance, if you will, or cause that brought us all together, that we're going to get this fixed and we're going to move it forward and be bigger and better. And we did.
And that's the thing that you really hope for, obviously. When you get through, it's just like you say, you don't want to turn the lights out when you go to bed at night because you're afraid of what happens the next day. But
exactly.
You have to have that never ever give up.
Right.
That's exactly right. And I think that's one of the hallmarks of a true leader is somebody who's willing to do that. But something else that you mentioned, I think it fits with something that I try to help people understand. You do a lot of stuff from the baseball aspect of things. I do it, as you can tell from what's on the wall behind me here. I do it from the flying game because that's where I came out of. I flew in the Air Force. I had great opportunity to fly in the Air Force, and it taught me so much. And everything I do now, my whole leadership process is based upon that. And so I tell people the first thing you need to do is to become the ACE. And that's an acronym. I mean, it has that reflection, in the military, ACE, especially the Air Force, ACE is a pretty big thing. To become that ACE, it's an acronym. But the third thing in there is the E, earnestly pursue your purpose with passion. And if I have somebody in my business who's coming there for a paycheck, boy, I tell you, that's tough to really deal with. I mean, I'm not saying that they should come there and work for free, but I want something more that's driving them, that cause that you talked about, that they're really trying to help us make a difference, make a big impact in the world, right?
Yeah, I absolutely. And I think that, that's why many of those guys that joined me 10 years ago are still with us. And I think it's because of, we're challenged today. I mean, the business that ran up pretty good with a 25 million, but we were challenged to kind of try to approach that number again and grow it and all those things. My industry's changed. But I think that I've got, and I'm very proud of my employees. I think we have I know we have a very resilient bunch around here. And we know how to take a punch or multiple ones and come back, dust ourselves off and keep moving forward. And, Ken, I mean, when I started this business 21 years ago, it wasn't like, I wrote down, here's the things I'm going to go through in the next 21 years and check off, embezzlement check, major turnover check, all this other, stress and crisis. I mean, I think that, it gets down to, I put things in front of you that you just have got to deal with. And many times you're not looking for them,
right,
but you have to figure out a way to work your way through it. Getting the employee support. I tell you what was interesting about that summer 2007. I was taking so many of those employee issues of the turnover of those guys personally.
Yep.
They left me.
Right.
And you may be familiar with a book called True North.
Yep.
And I'm trying to think of the author's name, but anyway, but it talks about as a leader to get the buy-in and to move it forward on issues and problems and crisis or what have you, is to go from I to we.
Mm-hmm.
And when we went from I, me, this personal thing to we, and I started reaching out to my team, they were saying things like, hey, you were good to those guys. They screwed us, not just you. And we're all invested in here. We want a company to be around and a career for the future. Let's go make this thing bigger and better. And I think it really proved what my company is made of, because they could take a serious punch and absolutely at the worst time possible, right there on the fringe of the recession, or the beginning of it, I should say, and having to work through it 4 years later, succeeding.
Well, you bring up a great point. The point is about the we in it, and why I try to use the term crew member as opposed to team member, obviously, because it fits my flying background. But the other reason is because we have to recognize most people believe that the most important person on an airplane is the pilot. Well, the pilot's pretty important, but the pilot's not the only person. And if you don't have the other crew members, like on the airplane I flew B-52s, you didn't have all the other crew members doing their jobs, then the mission did not get accomplished. And so everybody on the crew had to recognize we do this together. And I think that's a great aspect that you're bringing forward, that, yeah, you're the pilot of your crew, but you've got some other people that I'm guessing are pretty important to the operation.
Oh, absolutely. And Ken, totally to digress, but you mentioned about like leadership training and your military background. We literally, right around the corner from my office is a company called Crew Training, and they're all ex-military that do kind of some of the things you're doing. So it's they've been very successful. They've been out in this office complex about as long as I've been in my building, so they've done well.
Cool.
But yeah, I think that in many cases, when you're looking at issues and crisis and everything,
right.
I guess the other part of it, that I learned is, don't be a martyr about these things. Go out and reach out and get and solicit help to get through it. You don't have to. I think sometimes people think entrepreneurs are like superheroes. We all come in with red capes on every day, and it's like, oh, man, I told you earlier before we started the interview. I mean, I made seasoned college. I'm a 2.34 graduate from the University of Memphis, but I got smart people around me. I got guys with electrical engineering degrees, masters in computer technology, MBAs. I mean, I got a lot of smart people around me, and my job is to use my resources. And if I've got a problem, use my resources. And I think that's been really effective here.
Well, I think, a bunch of the stuff that you put into the books is really good stuff for people to see it from the realistic aspect. I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs going into business and they see the glory and they see the potential money and they see the potential fame and all those kind of things, and they are possible. But there's a lot of trial and tribulation, which is why you got to keep swinging, why you got to be able to hit those curveballs, because you and I were both you went much farther than I did playing baseball. But yeah, I played a little bit of second base. Yeah, just wasn't good enough to go much further than, well, we won't even say. But I'm going to guess you, like me and probably everybody else, you didn't hit every pitch. And there were some pitches that hit you.
Right.
And we just got to be able to deal with it.
Well, I think that's it. And I think a lot of people, when they go into starting their own business, I do think it's important. And I do lectures at colleges and University of Memphis and all these other places, Belmont and these places in this area. And I talk about the fact that, when you want to start your business, there's a lot of reasons to do it. But I would suggest to you that making a bunch of money should not be anywhere near the top of your list.
Right.
You know what, Ken, 21 years later, I was just trying to make a living for me and my family. I mean, I got fired from this job with this telecom company, had no money, no savings. I mean, it was just all American, get off your back and do something.
Right.
I suggest to the business students, the entrepreneurship students, that the number one reason to start your own business is one word: freedom. And the freedom to do an interview with Ken this morning, to do whatever I want to do, go to lunch. I mean, wherever I want to go and do things, that's, to me, that is the number one perk of starting, because there's a lot of stress to starting a business and growing it and managing it day to day, particularly in technology. But I think the freedom to be able to do all these different things that I have interest in is the number one reason. And I'll be very frank with you. I'm not being dismissive of the financial part of it. God has smiled on us. My wife and I have done well with this business, but it's never been the number one, not even close to the reason.
No.
It's a lot of pride in building something, freedom, those kind of things.
I mean, I like, and you two talk about this too. And one of the things I really appreciate about you that I've learned from when we first met is that you are a give back kind of guy, not just to your employees, but to the community and some other things. I like that aspect of it, that I do through the business. I have that opportunity to share my good fortune with some others who are significantly less fortunate. And so we do some work in our area here. And as I told you, we very short distance outside of State College. It's Pennsylvania. I mean, we are Appalachia. Okay.
Wow.
So it's great to be able to, to help some folks. And I really do believe in the teach them how to fish kind of thing. And we really do. We work with a group that does a great job of helping people pull themselves up by their bootstraps and get on with life, but then have the freedom to make better decisions than they did up to this point. And I think those are great things. So I love your charitable aspect that you do bring into this too. And those things are great that the money comes from. But the money it's kind of a false god. It really is.
I couldn't agree more. And I think, in our case, we look at like community service, Ken, it's not an option, but an obligation.
Right.
And we're not superheroes around here. We do some things that we can do. And we, we've got a student that comes in, we pay tuition for this student at the inner city school that they can, get a quality education, hopefully go to college. And they do some work for us and everything. We support the Ronald McDonald House and churches and various things like that. We're not looking for a bunch of headlines about that. It's just when you're having a business and within a community, you absolutely, in my opinion, it's an obligation to support that community the best you can. And, our big motto around here is we don't want to be just successful. We do want to be significant.
Right.
We want to be, make a difference, because you're right. The money is a false god. And at the end of the day, it's never going to be enough. And you're always going to have some kind
I've never made too much money.
Yeah, right. So I think that's something we take a lot of pride in, and we've been doing for years. And very frankly, Ken, some years it's been easier to do than others.
Right.
I remember 2013. I mean, it seemed like everybody and their brother that we ever talked to about helping out with technology and donations and gifting kind, they all came to me at once. And it was like we were having kind of a rough year, pretty flat. And I talked to my wife about it and to try to make some decisions on things. And we kind of came to the conclusion it means a whole lot more to be given back when it hurts a little bit or it hurts a lot in our case.
Yeah.
But you know, sometimes, Ken, in business, you got to do the things that are just on the title, the right things to do.
That's exactly right.
They don't necessarily appear, as nice entries on your balance sheet or your income statement, but you just got to go. And I would tell your listeners out there, if they were looking like who and what causes should I support and all that, support people that touch your heart, and whatever that organization is, and then give them everything you got and that you can. Because here's the thing that's interesting. I lectured at the University of Memphis on this, the program called Know Good, Do Good, and Thrive. And here's the thing for your listeners and small business owners, God, I don't have the extra money to do this and that. Can't get involved. I ain't got time and blah, blah, blah. I can tell you for a fact, when we stepped up our community service and charitable giving, our business grew significantly. People like investing in companies that are doing those kind of things. You're out there amongst many business leaders in the community. One of our big clients is FedEx around here, and also AutoZone, people like that, International Paper. We're given to the same causes. And I think when you see them, and many of us are on some boards and things, like whether it be the Boy Scouts or Better Business Bureau or something. So I think when you're out there doing those kind of things, you create a brand that is highly appealing to many companies that they want to do business with you, that kind of company that's giving back.
I think that's absolutely right. Hey, I got to ask you a question. Do you think you might consent to doing another one of these in the future?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I'd appreciate that, because you've given the audience today an awful lot to just think about. And the books, again, that's Keep Swinging, all these by Jay Myers, who's my guest here today on Aim Higher, and Hitting the Curveballs. And you've given great advice, great information, great insight. I think it was inspirational, which we try to be informative and inspirational on Aim Higher. And I think you've done a great job with that. And my guess is there's going to be some comments. And folks, we have been talking with this great man here who speaks not just from the heart, but from that real life experience. But hopefully he's helping you understand that life may not be a smooth path, but you can still do great things as long as you think through them and you work through them. So Jay, I just want to thank you for making the time for our audience today, and all you've been doing out there and showing people the way and give people a realistic understanding of what business is all about.
Appreciate it, Ken, and thanks for having me on the show.
Well, I appreciate it. Hey, folks, I'm Ken Pash, your host for Aim Higher. You know what? Go out there, unlock, engage, and optimize your full potential today. You can do it. You got a question? You want to comment on what Jay is talking about? Post it on our Better Bosses blog, and always aim higher.